Hi, everyone. I'd like to ask you to think back to your days at middle school. Remember middle school? 7th, 8th, 9th grade, that challenging age of 13, 14 years old? Try to picture your school. What is the first or most meaningful memory that comes to mind? Does it have to do with studying, tests, or grades? Or perhaps something of a more relational aspect, such as relations with a specific teacher, group of friends, or lack thereof? Now I'd like you to please raise your hand if your first or most meaningful memory had to do with the first cluster I mentioned, academic aspects. Now please raise your hand if your first or most meaningful memory had to do with the second cluster I mentioned, relational aspects. In every forum I was ever at, when asked this question, 100% of participants raised their hands for the second cluster. Relations and education matter. And this is not just based on our own personal memories or experiences, but on a long line of research in fields such as school climate and social emotional learning, which focus on students and staff members' well-being and their influence on teaching and learning. Now, within the world of educational relations, teacher-student relations stand out as particularly important. That is because they are the bridge between academic expectations and interpersonal interactions. It's a popular belief that a teacher is either born with the ability to foster good, strong, healthy, supportive relationships with students or not. It's considered a characteristic that you either have or don't have. But what the world of school climate and social emotional learning have taught us is that it's not about being born with an X factor. It's about shifting the focus of education from textbook to human interaction. And that is something that teachers can and should acquire. Now, these days, most of the areas in which teacher-student relations are promoted within schools are during extracurricular activities. So we see them in special programs and events held by teachers or external experts. We see them take place in the guidance counselor's office, which is a safe space for students to interact with authority figures. And many times we see them in informal meetings, which could happen before class begins, in the hallways, or over the phone when a teacher checks in on a student and asks how they're doing. But where do we not see an emphasis on teacher-student relations? Behind the closed classroom doors, during disciplinary lessons, such as science, math, and history. This is an astonishing fact, because that is where students spend most of their time in school. This gap in research and practice, as well as a newer field of research titled relational pedagogy, led me to question, what can be done to promote teacher-student relations in lessons? And what do these relations even look like? I decided to start with the experts, teachers who excel in their relations with students, teachers who are experts in teacher-student relations. Now, we know that relationships are built through interpersonal interactions, which require communication. And we know that a main element that allows for communication is talk. I wanted to know what it is that teachers who are experts in relations say during class. What do they know about their speech patterns? And how do their students experience what they do and say? I started my journey in one large middle school, where I focused on the humanities, as these are known to be language-rich subjects where we would expect to hear more talking. I wanted to know who are the experts in teacher-student relations at that particular school, and what it is that makes them experts. To answer these questions, I turned to the principals. I interviewed the 3 school principals, the middle school, high school, and 6-year principal. Their interviews brought about some interesting insights. For example, they said that what students consider to be good relations doesn't necessarily fit the literary definition exactly. There are other elements, maybe less traditional ones. They also said that sometimes if students like the teacher, they'll succeed in school even if the teacher is not the greatest disciplinary expert. If good communication was established with the students, the learning part works out on its own. But what are these less traditional elements? The principal's perspective just wasn't enough. And so I turned to the graduates. I sent out a survey to over 300 recent school graduates. in order to cross-reference and to verify what the principals have said. Now, before I tell you some of the items that were on that survey, I'd like to ask you to go back to that memory of middle school. This time, focus on a teacher with whom you've had good relations. Hopefully there was such a teacher. Try to keep that teacher in your mind and think about how you might have answered questions such as these. Does this teacher care about you and what happens to you beyond school settings? Did he or she make you feel that your thoughts were interesting and worthy? The graduates who answered the survey had the opportunity to add a personal note at the end. Many of them took the opportunity. They wrote things such as, "These teachers made me feel meaningful as a person, that I'm not just another somebody, that my future isn't set, and that only I am responsible for my own life. This teacher made me feel that I could always turn to her, and when I did, she gave me the best feeling there is and brought a smile to my face." 175 graduates answered the survey. Cross-referencing their answers with those that 3 principals gave during their interviews, I found my sample. 4 teachers of the humanities were labeled experts in interpersonal relations with students and agreed to participate in the study. 3 other teachers who were not labeled experts of relations with students will act as a control group. 32 lessons given by all these teachers are currently being documented and transcribed in order to try to trace characteristics of both groups. We're looking to find things such as, does one group use specific words compared to the other? But when we talk about talk and relationships, it's not just about the things that are said. We're also looking to see if the time that's devoted to student talk is different between the groups, and does one group encourage a variety of voices compared to the other, and other elements. 10 episodes will be extracted from each expert teacher's documentation, episodes which hold answers to some of these questions and others, and in which we can see interesting dialogue happening with students. These episodes will be used as research data. The next thing we wanted to know is, when these teachers talk in class, are the things they say spontaneous or planned? Are they meant to build knowledge or support relationships, or maybe both? And are they even aware of what they do and say? To answer these questions, the 4 expert relational teachers will be personally interviewed and presented with the 10 episodes that were extracted from their documentation to find out what they know about what they do and say. Great. So now we have 3 different perspectives on what relational experts do in class. But all 3 perspectives are given by adult audiences. There's one crucial perspective missing, that of the current target audience, the 7th, 8th, and 9th graders that actually participate in their classes, a perspective which may very well be different than the others. In order to get their take on what these relational experts do, 16 students that participated in the documented lessons will also be personally interviewed and also presented with the 10 extracted episodes. They'll be asked questions such as, what is the teacher doing in this particular episode? And how did it make you feel? At the end of the day, we know that teacher-student relations are crucial for learning. In this study, we focus on teacher talk as a key to understanding these relations, based on the firm belief that building positive relations is not a born quality, or it is, but it's not only a born quality, it is also a skill that can be learned. But in order to understand what these skills are, how to acquire them, we need to be able to spot them and understand them. If we can trace what expert relational teachers do and say during class, what they know about what they do and say, and what their students experience from what they do and say, then hopefully we'll be able to train other teachers to utilize classroom converse in order to promote relations and, by extent, academic aspects. Thank you very much.